Hi guys, welcome to today's video. A bit of a quicker video today. I've been off sick with COVID for the last week and a bit, which is why I didn't get a video last weekend, but I will get through this one here. I've got a great topic on mind here that has come up a few times in the comments section, so I thought it'd be a good opportunity to talk through this, which is what to consider when you're buying an older lens from any manufacturer. It could be Canon, Sigma, Nikon, anyone like that. I will also be using Canon as an example because that's what I use, but these are some major points you need to think about when you are purchasing these lenses that on the face of them look like incredible deals, but you do need to consider the bigger picture when you are buying them. So the main first thing that comes up, I say a lot in the comments, is when you're buying one of these older lenses like the 300mm Mark 1 or the 500mm Mark 1 that I've got, is serviceability. Now these lenses are no longer supported by Canon, so you cannot go to a Canon service centre and ask them to service this lens. They will clean them, but you cannot service them. They cannot get the spare parts from them anymore. So things like the lens hood, like this lens hood, the screws started coming out and it was very loose and stuff like that, and they don't stock the spare parts for it. You don't even stock the lens hood anymore. You have to buy an aftermarket one of those. But things like the motor goes, you can't get that as well. You have to sort out third-party people to do that servicing. And now there are a few in the UK who do third-party servicing on older lenses, but as these lenses get more and more out of date, and you've got to consider the 300mm and the 500mm, they're over 20 years old now, so they're not new lenses by any stretch of the imagination, and there is only a certain shelf life for manufacturers in any industry. If that's, I work in the bike industry, and I think it's 6 years. I think we legally have to keep spare parts available for certain bikes before they can go, no, we don't no longer have to support this product. So it's the same with the camera industry. They do tend to push it a little bit longer than that, I do find, but that is something to consider. So if you're someone who uses the camera a lot outside in the wilderness, you're going to get wet, you're going to potentially drop it. If you are worried about that, obviously you've got insurance. I have all my kit insured, so if anything does go wrong, I can claim on that insurance. There's companies as well that do old for new, so if you insured this for the retail price of what it was, then they'd replace it with the closest like for like, which interestingly enough would have to be the 400mm RF at this point in time, as they don't make, or could be the 100 to 300 actually, but we discussed at the time. I always do mine for old, so I just get the monetary value if I have to claim, and I just buy a replacement if I damage in that way. But you do have to consider that is a big point that people will forget sometimes, that you buy these old lenses at really cheap price, great quality, but something goes wrong, what do you do? So that's the major point you need to remember. The next point is weight. These old lenses are a hell of a lot heavier than their newer equivalents. So I think like this lens here, and it's the placement of the weight as well, because they we're still in the sort of infancy of having these bigger prime lenses. All the weight's right at the front of the lens, so you've got that big element at the front, everything's pushed forward. If you look at the lens diagrams for the modern lenses, what they do, obviously start with a big element, but what they do is they push the rest of the glass towards the middle, towards the back of the lens to keep a better balance, and they're using lighter glass now. You obviously got from Canon the DO range, which uses it's like a recycled plastic or something instead of glass, which then reduces the weight even further. But there are arguments, does that then reduce the image quality? Because you're not using proper glass, you're using something different than that, and optically is it as good? So there's those things to consider as well. So if you're looking for something lighter, then the newer the lens you buy, the lighter it's going to be. The difference between the weight, I think, of the Mark 1 500mm and the Mark 3 600mm is it's like a kilo and a half lighter for the new 600mm, and you get that extra reach. But yeah, compared to a £1,500 lens, compared to a £16,000 lens, or even second hand probably £9,000 lens. You know, you've got those things you can buy X amount of those 500mm for the same price as one of the 600mm if you looked at it that way as well. When one broke, you just buy another one. You know, so there's those considerations you do need to keep in mind, because if you haven't got the money to source someone privately to fix it, or you don't trust someone privately to fix it who's not Canon, then you are going to have to look on, if you go on Canon's website, on their repair website, they have a list of what lenses are currently serviceable. So you go through that list and you go, cool, okay, no worries. And they also have on that list when they are going to be unserviceable. So if you look at stuff like the R3, I think it's 2020, 2030 or something, I think they've got that listed out at the moment, something stupid on there, so then that's when they'll be unserviceable. Something along those lines. They do have everything they currently have available on there, and then if your lens isn't listed, then they don't service it. So that could put you off getting one of these. You could go, okay, instead of buying the Mark 1, I'll buy the Mark 2 for an extra £2,000, and I've got that peace of mind until 2026 that it's serviceable. So they're the major 2 points you have to think about. Another one obviously is compatibility. So you've got to think that if you're buying these older lenses for mirrorless, for example, you're going to have to buy an adapter, an EF to RF adapter. Once you've got that, you will lose as well. Most of the time, if not all the time, most of the time, you will lose speed. So you're going to not have the same FPS you would have with a native lens, an RF lens. You're also potentially going to reduce the image quality, and you will, from my experience, unless you buy an R1, an R3, or maybe the R6 Mark II, you are going to experience a slowdown in the autofocus as well. So that is another thing to consider. If you're using a DSLR and you want to buy these old lenses, have at it. You're not going to have a problem at all. Everything's going to work as it is. When you're going to mirrorless, you do have to make those considerations that you are going to slow down your equipment 99% of the time, and that does include as well the autofocus. So the only reason that stuff like the R3, from my experience, works almost as well as a DSLR, still slightly slower on the autofocus, works almost as well, is because it has that bigger battery that can drive the motors and can drive that big glass quicker. So those are the three major points you have to consider when you're buying an older lens. I hope you've enjoyed the video. Please subscribe, comment, do everything you're doing absolutely beautifully at the moment, if you want to see more, and I will catch you in the next one, and we'll look at something a little bit more retro. So catch you next one. Goodbye.